Accenture's annual trends report uncovers how human behaviors will affect culture, society, and business in the year ahead. To learn more about the trends, I have Mark Curtis, Head of Innovation and Thought Leadership at Accenture Interactive. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
Well, what are the trends and main findings?
So there are sweeping changes taking place right now in all sorts of things which you would describe as at the intersection of technology and business and humans. In other words, how are we relating to all the digital things that take place around us, and how are we relating to products and services which we consume digitally? The first one of those we call Come As You Are. And this is really about people really beginning to rethink who they are and how they show up, particularly at work, but also as consumers as well. What's happened has been that COVID has given people the time and the space to redefine who they are. And we have loads of evidence for that. And that's given rise not only to the great resignation, where people are leaving organizations and going off to find other things to do, but many of them also staying with organizations and building what we're calling the side hustle economy, where they find new ways of both earning money and expressing themselves, all the while hanging on to their existing job. And that's really shifting the relationship between employers and employees. It's also creating opportunities as people redefine themselves for brands to go out and find new products and services to deliver to people as they really embrace who they are.
Now, what is the second trend and call to action?
The second trend is called the end of abundance thinking, and this one is talking about the way in which the supply chain challenges of the last 9 months, which have been absolutely global and really deep, are forcing people to put a question mark over something we didn't really know we took for granted, which is the idea of abundance, that we can always dig up more, make more, buy more if we can afford it. That's come to a shuddering halt over the last 9 months. Now, the supply chain crisis will probably go away at some stage soon. We still have a service level crisis where there aren't enough workers to go around for all sorts of reasons. As those things disappear, they will still leave a hangover where it's opened the window to people asking questions about, is the way we think about consumerism the right way to go about things? And of course, unsurprisingly, the younger they are, the more they are framing that through the lens of the climate crisis and sustainability. And so what's happened over the last 9 months is really triggering a reevaluation of our relationship with consumerism and the rise of greater opportunity space for sustainability. And that's not going away.
Mark, it also sounds interesting that shows that we're much more of a global community than anything, and one affects the other.
It's so true. The supply chain challenges have been, what happened in the Suez Canal with the ship blocking the canal for several days, really affected the whole of the world. If China has a problem, if there is a problem sourcing chips, it turns out that those electronic chips have an effect on all sorts of services and products all over the world. So that interconnectedness is a lesson that has landed with people and is making people think about that global economy that we have in a completely different way. But it also means we are hearing the same things in Paris, in Johannesburg, in San Francisco, everywhere.
Now, I wish our political team, our politics or politicians in all the countries would understand that and make us a more cohesive community. So, what is the third trend and call to action?
So the third trend is called the next frontier. And it won't surprise you that this is really about the metaverse, and I'm sure you've talked about that and heard about it, and there's a lot of talking about it, and particularly, with Zuckerberg renaming Facebook to Meta, it's really hit the headlines. At a deep level, we think the metaverse represents a new cultural epoch, at least. And new cultural epochs always take place in a place. So you think about Renaissance Italy, you think about Vienna in the 1900s, you think about the swinging 60s in London, my own city. This new one is going to take place in a place, but the place is a metaverse. And place is very important here when we think about it, because you don't talk generally about going to a website or going to an app, but you will talk about going to the metaverse or places in the metaverse, because that will be the mental model. And in the metaverse, you will also find there is a population. Again, you don't typically look at an app and think, who's looking at this at the same time as I am, unless maybe it's a dating app. But in the metaverse, population will be critical. If there's no one there, it's not going to be a place that's very interesting to visit. And thirdly, because of the technology known as NFTs, you will be able to own property. There will be scarcity. So it kind of links to the abundance thinking. There will be scarcity in the metaverse and pricing, and you will be able to carry your property from one part of the metaverse to another. You can't do that through apps and websites traditionally at the moment. Those three things together make this a really very, very different proposition. It will take some time to play out. And at the moment, really frankly, the metaverse is a guess that lots of technologies and trends are going to come together. Our view is that guess is correct.
Wow. What is the fourth trend and call to action?
The fourth trend is really down in the kind of design details, because we are designers. And it's about, we call it This Much Is True, and it's about the way in which Google has turned us all into question machines over the last 24 years since it was founded. I'd be prepared to bet that if you could show a way to measure it, the volume of questions the ordinary human asks are out of all proportion to what we were doing just a quarter of a century ago. That's had an effect on us, because we expect to have those questions, we have a lot of them, we expect to have them answered instantly. There's also been a crisis of trust, again, particularly over the last 2 years, but probably dating back before that as well. And for companies, what it means is people are approaching brands and products and services, and they've got lots of questions in their heads about what they're trying to buy here. It's a huge design challenge to answer those questions with new layers of information. So if we just go back to sustainability, for example, people are now asking a whole host of questions like, what's the carbon impact of what I do here? And we're seeing some really interesting organizations like MasterCard together with a Swedish startup called Duconomy, who are trying to answer those questions about carbon impact at the point of sale. Those questions are not going anywhere, but they are adding complexity. They're adding more questions at the point of purchase. And for companies to build trust, and this is very much a trend about trust between brands and their customers, for companies to build that trust, they have to get and triangulate those layers of information well, so that people can see, this is what I want, and I believe that this is what I'm getting.
You know, you just made me think about that when you talked about questions in Google. I do the same thing with YouTube. Being a videographer and production person, I always look for new equipment, new ways to edit. And then right there on YouTube, somebody's showing me a new product, new light kit, a new camera, a new way to edit. And it's amazing, truly correct.
It's so true. I got caught in a snowstorm recently, and I had to put on snow chains for the first time ever in my life. What did I do? I went straight to YouTube.
Now, one more question. What is the fifth trend and call to action?
So the fifth trend is called Handle with Care. And I love this one because this one really came out of the fact that we drew these trends from 2,000 designers across the world. And the single word used the most by those designers again and again was care. And we had this kind of moment when we were talking about it, and we realized care is not a subject you hear people talking about very much. But wow, after 2 years of coronavirus, of course people are talking about care a lot. And it turns out that there are many different aspects of care, that there's a huge challenge around caring, that we're having to care for different people, you know, our families, our friends, the employees around us. And the role of caregivers has become incredibly visible. And it kind of starts with the individual. We're very concerned, and we've seen rising levels of concern about our mental health over the last 2 years. And, you know, with the fear and the anxiety and lockdown and the lack of confidence about, can I book that holiday because I don't know what's happening next? No wonder mental health has become such a big issue everywhere over the last 2 years. Again, organizations have to respond to this, and we're talking about what organizations need to do. So the call to action is companies can differentiate themselves by their approach to care, not only for their employees, but also for customers as well. I think actually every business becomes a care business. We used to think maybe it was just something that happened in the medical area, but I don't think so. I think everybody has to become a care business now.
Definitely. Mark Curtis, thank you for joining us on Morning Blend and talking about Accenture's annual trends report. And you know what's very interesting? I just thought about that. I'm able to look you up on Google and look you up on YouTube, and I'm sure you can do the same with me. We are definitely a global community.
It's so true, so very true. Thank you.
Thank you.